Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate. Hello, hello. Hello. Okay, today we are going to talk about a topic that I think unnecessarily fills people with a lot of fear. And that is the topic of quoting your prices to your clients. There is one way to do it, in which you will usually end up working for a lot less than you should. You will stress yourself out. It's going to be relatively unpleasant all around. And there's another way to do it in which you feel a lot calmer about it. You feel a lot more confident about it. You end up making more, and your client ends up being happier in the long run. So I don't know about you, but I would like to just vote for number two. That's the direction we like to head. So in this episode, we're going to talk about exactly why and how to do it. So, Kate, I have a question for you, and I realize I'm a little bit putting you on the spot, but what is the question that most clients ask first?
How much is it going to cost?
Kind of thought
Before
you
you even
I mean,
talked
you
about
know,
the
yeah.
project
Right.
sometimes, depending
Yes.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes clients, they don't know what to ask, when to ask it, how to ask it, what the process is. And maybe it's worked with other vendors that they've used, other service providers. They don't know what they don't know. So don't take it as any sort of indication that, this client is asking me for my rate, so I have to give it to them now. Or, this client, they just don't know probably. Or you have more power in this situation than I think we give ourselves credit for or realize, and we don't have to jump when our clients say jump in this scenario. We obviously want to provide our clients with the best service that we can when we can, but when it comes to prices, when they ask that question, we don't immediately have to give an answer.
Exactly.
And certainly sometimes clients will ask, "Oh, what's your hourly rate?" I should say this strategy applies to whether you are going to be working on an hourly rate with your client or whether you're going to be working on a project basis. Obviously, there's a lot of variables and nuances. Maybe at the start of the project, they're asking for an hourly rate, but you're saying, hey, actually, I quote prices by the project and I can get you a quote once you've talked through the scope of this work. And maybe you have back and forth and you end up thinking hourly is the best. Either way, what we're going to talk about applies to both hourly or a project basis.
The thing to remember is that clients don't know how to be clients. As Kate said, they may have had all kinds of different experiences with previous vendors, with previous service providers. They may not know how to work with a real professional. So the almost always the first question they're going to come in with is how much is this going to cost? But think about that for a second. That's their first question. But how could you possibly answer that right off the bat? How could you possibly? Because every project is going to be different. Every client is going to be different. Every timeline is going to be different. And your rates should reflect that. If you are working with a client who you can tell it's going to be a more in-depth project, there's going to be a lot more things that you have to learn. This is not an industry you're familiar with. And maybe the client has a lot more stakeholders involved. There are going to be a lot more people giving feedback. That is going to make it a much more complicated process, probably a longer process. And it's something that you should be charging more for. Versus when you're working with a client, maybe you're familiar with them, maybe you're familiar with the industry, maybe it's so starting out with a small project, they're just doing a welcome email, something like that. Then that's going to be, you should price that accordingly because it's probably going to be a less, let me say less expensive project for them. For you to try to answer that at the beginning is virtually impossible because you cannot know. But that's the only question that they really know to ask at that point. They don't know to ask, okay, well, what's your process look like? And how does it, we are going to guide the conversation for them. And so it's not that you're not going to answer that question. You absolutely are, of course. That's part of how you get the work. But you're just not going to answer it first. In order to get all of the information, you need to ask them questions about the project in order to get to the point where you can quote them a cost for a project.
Yeah, think about it in terms of, this is not like a grocery store where you're looking at bananas at Trader Joe's and you're looking at bananas at Whole Foods and bananas at your local market, and they're all relatively similarly priced. They're within a few cents of each other or whatever it
You
is.
haven't been in a Whole Foods lately, kid.
No, I haven't been. I go to my TJ's. TJ's has great prices.
Yeah, that's no.
But anyway, either way, the relatively similar, or any sort of consumer store like a Home Depot. Your 2x4 at there is going to be a certain price, and that's what it is. You're buying a specific product, and there's the price. It's not like that. Compare it to, asking someone, "Hey, how much is it gonna cost to renovate my home?" You're not gonna ask your neighbors who maybe you have a two-bedroom, one-bathroom, and your neighbors have a five-bedroom, five-bathroom with three half baths. Their home renovation might be very different, or maybe theirs was, built in the 1800s and yours is built in the 2000s, and so it needs less, they're getting rid of asbestos. You didn't need that. Think of all the variables between home renovations for people. There's not one quote for a home renovation. There's factors. Someone has to come, look at the house, evaluate it, say what actually needs to be done. Oh, this one needs windows. This needs a new HVAC. This one just needs, maybe a little more insulation in the attic, whatever it is. Those are two very different quotes.
I'm just really enjoying all the details that you put into that metaphor.
Well, thank
Appreciated
you.
it. It was the
Yes.
HVAC that really did it for me. Appreciated it. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
relevant to my current life experience,
Yes, exactly. But yeah, it's not apples to apples. It's not bananas to bananas. It's not house to house. It's going to be different from project to project, which is really how, when you almost invariably get that question first, that's how you're going to answer it. You're going to say,
Mhm.
when they say, well, how much is it going to cost me? You say, absolutely great question. I can't really give you a good idea of what the project cost is going to be until I get a better sense of the project and what it's going to entail, what kinds of work we're going to be doing together. So I'd love to hop on a quick call with you just so I can get a sense of that and give you an accurate quote, which is reasonable.
And we will link to the episode we just did about, kind of red flags to look out for, what to look out for in terms of copywriting job scams. Because if you're thinking, oh, I have to hop on a call, I don't want to hop on with a brand new client. Yes, hop on a call. Best case, Google Meet, Zoom call, anything like
Mhm.
that. Make sure we get a good rapport with whoever it is that you're going to be working with. If you've worked with a client on an ongoing basis, maybe you don't need to hop on a call to talk this
Mhm.
part through. But more than likely, it's best practice. It's easy. A 15, 20, maybe 30-minute
Yeah.
call max is going to be way more efficient for everyone than any sort of back and forth. And it'll give you the best chance to ask questions, follow up, just get it done right there versus having any doubts over what the expectations are,
Mhm.
what the deliverable is. You just want to get everyone on the same page. And that will help your pricing infinitely, because where it goes wrong and where you're gonna be, "Oh, I didn't actually, I quoted based on an hourly rate of $75 an hour, but I actually came out to, $25 an hour because of all the, the extra time I spent." That likely started by not being on the same page of expectations and not actually having a good sense of what the project was about. So,
Mhm.
just rip the Band-Aid off, do
Yeah.
a 15-minute call, and
Yeah.
and get all the things you need to get paid correctly.
Yeah. And CCA students, you have your Nail Your Client Calls course. So
Mhm.
we give you the questions asked. We'll talk about some of them certainly here, but give you all the questions asked and really even kind of a little script to guide the client through the process. But you were starting to get into red flags, and it would be a major red flag
Yeah.
for a client if you said, "It's a great question. And I'm happy to give you that quote, but I need to understand the project a little bit more first. So can we hop on a quick call and I can ask you some questions about the scope of the project and what you need and your timeline and all of that kind of thing." It would be a major red flag if a client said, "No, I need you to just tell me the price." I think I've heard of someone saying that to a student, maybe I've never experienced it, but I think I've heard of someone saying that to a student maybe like a handful of times, and
Mhm.
we're talking over the course of, what, 12, almost 13 years and 12,000 students, a handful of times. But boy, is that a red flag. If someone is not willing to get on a call with you to discuss their project, then this is not someone that you wanna work with.
Mhm.
Hey there, it's Nikki. I wanted to take a very quick minute to make sure that you knew about our free on demand copywriting training. Now, whether you are brand new to copywriting or you've been doing it for a while, but you just can't seem to hit those income goals, this training is for you. You are going to learn the 3 secrets to landing freelance copywriting work without relying on frustrating job bidding sites like Upwork or Fiverr, or without cold calling strangers. And if you've watched any of the student success stories on this channel, and if you haven't yet, check them out. This is the exact same training that they all started with. And I mean students like Kate K, who is making 6 figures working part-time and retired her husband to help her build her business. Students like Stuart, who replaced his full-time salary, which was a good one, with his freelance income and then some. Stacy, who hit 6 figures in her first 6 months as a freelance copywriter, and Ashley, who landed the in-house copywriting job of her dreams. They all started with this free training, and you can start with this free training too. So sign up right now at freecopywritingtraining.com.
Another red flag on the copywriter end is if you're talking with a client, very preliminary, and they ask, what's your price for an email? And you have a price for an email,
Ooh.
that is a big red flag. And if a client isn't savvy, which again, we were talking about clients don't know how to be clients, they might not realize that that's a red flag. You might not even realize that's a red flag. You think efficiency, here's what I charge for an email. There's so much variability in every email, every homepage, every ebook, every name the project. So might you have a sense of what you charge for a given medium, whether it's, a banner ad, email, etc. Yeah, you might have a sense, you might have a range. But for you to just quote something of here's what I charge for every email, the major red flag, and a savvy client is going to see through that. So I would highly recommend that. Is efficient as it might make you feel, it's not a best practice. It's not setting you up for success.
No, it's the mark of an amateur, frankly. And that is the scenario, like Kate was saying, where you eventually get to the point where, like, I think I made minimum wage on this project because it ended up being so much more involved than I thought it was.
Yeah.
The just look at emails in your inbox, the difference between the strategy and the length and all of the kinds of things between one email and another, they should never be priced as, or I, not never, but with a variability like that, they wouldn't be priced and shouldn't be priced in the same way. So when a client asks you what your price is, you explain to them. You just want to hop on a quick call to get the information. Again, if they balk at that, let them go. You do not want to be working with a client who's like, well, what's your, no, I'm not going to get a call. I just tell me what your price is. I need to understand if I can afford you, or what, however they say it. You can say again, I completely understand that, but I'm not comfortable giving you a price until I better understand the scope of the project. And if they really don't understand, which first of all is a good boundary, a good and healthy boundary to set. If you have a potential client pushing back against a healthy boundary like that, that's not a client relationship you want to have. Because if they're pushing back at this point in the relationship, you haven't even started working with them yet, and they're already making it difficult for you, I guarantee that the rest of it will be difficult too. There's never been a client scenario where it started out hard and then got easier. It always either starts out hard and stays hard, or starts out hard and gets harder. So do not be afraid. And CCS students, you have all of the skills to go out and find any number of clients. You are not beholden to having to work with this one client. Yes, even if you pitched them, just because you pitch a client doesn't mean you have to take the work.
Yeah.
If you start interacting with the client and you go, oh, geez, I don't think so. Let them go. Let them go.
Yeah. I think when we're first starting out, it's so tempting to say, well, I got to do client. There's a potential client. Take a breath, take a beat, and is this where you want to put your time and energy? Because all of this time and energy that's going into a client and this type of thing that's making you miserable, that's not why you got into this in the first place, first of all. But second of all, then you don't have that time and energy to go after clients that you want to work with, to do the work that you want to work with. So just really weigh whether it's worth it. And that's also where pricing comes in, that if I really do want to work on this project, but I know it's going to be a little bit of a pain. I really have to wrangle this client and and kind of handhold them throughout this entire process, you want to charge more for that. You want to be compensated for it because there's nothing worse than working on a project where not only did you get underpaid, but that you were miserable the entire time that you were being underpaid.
Mhm.
You
Both
never
of
want
those
that. I mean,
compound. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, do you ever wanna be underpaid? No, of course not, but if you really love the client, you love the people, you love the work, you're so proud of the outcome, and you're like, "Ooh, I kind of undercharged this," it feels way different. You're kinda like, "Okay," you can let that go
Yeah.
a lot easier to say, "Okay, next time I'm gonna price it differently, and I know I have lessons learned now, and for what from working with this client." That's a little, easier of a pill to swallow.
Mhm. Exactly. So, assuming that your client is like, "Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense," because again, it's reasonable. But so assuming that you're talking with a client for who understands that they need to explain the project to you a little bit or they need to talk it through with you, what kind of questions are you gonna ask them on the call? Really, you're gonna ask, "Okay, what is the project? What are you hoping to accomplish with this project? Who is the target audience for this project? How much do you know about the target audience and their wants and their needs? And okay, what are the elements of this project? Is this a, in it make sure that you're very clear on the individual elements. If they say, well, it's an email funnel, that's not it. I mean, it's the beginning of an answer, but that's not a full answer because an email funnel could be 3 emails, an email funnel could be 12 emails, and that's obviously going to affect the scope. And do they have a sense for what they want the theme of each email to be, or is that something you're going to have to help them figure out?
Mhm.
How much do they if they're need you to put together a sales page, do they know what they want to go on that sales page, or are you going to have to dig in and figure out that information for them? All of these are going to affect the time that you're going to spend working on this project, the time you're going to spend preparing this project, maybe even the time you're going to spend editing the project, and of course should go into the cost to them for the project.
Mhm, and you wanna ask, if it's whether it's an email or an ad or whatever, what's happening before the user sees whatever it is that you're working on, and what happens after? Where are they going? Are those materials already created, or is that something they also need help with? Because this could be an opportunity for more work for you. They're like, "Oh, actually, we haven't created, where we're going, where they're driving to." Okay, maybe that's where you start because to write something and not actually know have nothing exist yet, it might be better to start with that and then write the email because you know exactly where they're going. All of that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. The understanding the full customer journey. And sometimes, and it's not client's fault, right? Then you may be going through this and saying, I actually think if all of this stuff needs to be created, we might want to start at the beginning
Mhm.
and look at the opt-in page and optimize that as well as we can, and then get them through the process so that it's the point of purchase becomes natural in the flow. We guide them through, and you get this by talking with the client, and then they go, oh yeah, okay, that makes total sense. Instead of starting with the sales page and then working backward, it might make sense, and it's depending on the project. I'm not saying this is always going to be the case, but it might make sense to start at the beginning and then figure out the process to get people through to the sales page so that the purchase is inevitable. But again, you can't understand any of this until you are talking to the client and getting a sense for what the project entails, what their goals are, all of that kind of thing. And you might get into it where they say, no, 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 we've got all this stuff already built out. We just need a sales page. We got the emails. We were working with a copywriter we really liked, but she's on maternity leave or something or something. Who knows? We just need that sales page. Okay, that's still an important piece of information. You say, all right, I would love to be able to see those emails
Mhm.
going into this so I can have a good sense of what those emails are leading somebody into. If possible, see it before you get in the project because
Heck yeah.
sometimes you will look at those emails and go, these emails don't actually lead someone to making a purchase. They lead them
Mm.
to something else. So,
Or best case scenario, though, you have great, copy and language and messaging that you might be able to
yes,
repurpose in different ways because you want that consistent experience for someone, so don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. If there's already great
yes.
copy you can use and leverage, do it.
Exactly, and also too, you have the opportunity to if it's mostly good, but you have some suggestions
Mhm.
and they're not gonna take, not gonna take say, "Hey, I love this series, I was reading through just one thought, I would suggest maybe changing this section to this." And honestly, you could even just do that as a freebie little bonus to your client just to show them how much you care about them being successful. If it's not gonna be something that's taking off a whole that's not going to take a whole bunch of time. You can offer little things like suggestions just as an act of goodwill, which also too might be like, oh, that's a great idea. I wonder if we need to do that here. Are you available for this project? Yes, I am. But so the point is you're going to get on the call with your client and you're going to get a good understanding of what this project entails. You're also getting an understanding for what this client is like to work with, for how well they understand what it is that they are selling or what the outcome it is that they want to accomplish from this project
Or
and how
their
well
audience.
or their audience. Exactly. You get in a sense for how easy they are or not easy they are going to be to work with, which of course is crucial. So then the end of the call, you have all the information. So that's the moment when you quote the price, right? No, don't do it. Don't do it, friend. Don't. And I know there is like when the client asks you the price, there is that pressure to try to give them an answer because that's how humans work. We want to give people an answer when people ask us a question, but the time to give them the quote is not at the end of the call after you've spent 15, maybe even 30 minutes talking all of this stuff through. You've got all these notes, all this stuff in your head. When you think about it, it's just not a reasonable time for you to come up with a quote, right?
You need to process all of that and just sit with it, take it back and say, okay, I think, here's how long it might take me to write this. And this client, oof, there might be several rounds of revisions. And I know I only usually budget, if some people put limits on their rounds of revisions, which if that's you, fine. But those rounds of revisions might be more in depth than you normally think they are because of how this client operates, and you get a sense of that from this call. So weighing all of these factors to maybe pad your time a little bit more to say, I think this is actually going to take longer time than normal. Because again, all of our rates, yes, they're based in our experience, where our general region, if you will, of where we live and data points. They're not just pulled out of thin air. We are basing it in roughly how long something's going to take us. Obviously, our hourly rate accounting for our experience in the field and the value we're bringing and all of that sort of thing. But there are factors that weigh into this, and you want to factor all of that in. And it's very hard to do on the fly to say, oh, okay, this client might be challenging to work with, so I'm going to up this by this many. There's time that you need to actually write this out and think it through.
Yeah. Also, if you try to do it on the call, there is an almost 100% chance that you're going to underquote because you want to please them. You want to give them a number that you want to give them a number they're going to say yes to on the call. And you want to, and that's almost always going to be way less than what you should be charging because you're looking at someone you want this work and you're going to end up undercutting yourself. And that's a bad place to be.
And almost every CCA student, we see it all the time, is like, oh, think what I came out to the quote, but I'm really nervous to set this through. If you're nervous to set this through, good. That's what you should send through. If you are like, oh yeah, this is easy, this is a no-brainer, then it might be lower than it should be. I think nerves aren't a bad thing. And I think we're always afraid to send in the quotes we're nervous about because we don't want the client to say no. We're so excited about the project. We want the work. We want to work on the project. But so often a client, we don't know. This falls under the don't make assumptions. We don't know what's going on the client side. If this is what we think the project is worth in our time and what it's going to take us and the value that we're adding and all of that sort of thing, then that's what we should be sending through.
Yeah. Don't make assumptions. You don't know what's going on in a client's business.
No.
You don't know what's most important to them.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make assumptions
no idea what
either
they'll say
way.
yes or no to. Yeah.
Exactly. So your best chance of getting the work is to take a moment, think it through carefully, and then send through your quote.
Yeah. Focus on what you know versus what because I think there's also, even if you do too low of a quote, it's not that the client's instantly going to say yes, but the client might be like, oh, that's actually really low. Like, what's going on here? So
yes,
do what you think, what you know feels good for compensating your time and what you're going to be happy with.
Yeah, it's a flag it's a red flag for a client if you price too low, because then it looks like you're not experienced and they don't want to work with a copywriter who's not experienced, who doesn't know what they're doing. So, in fact, actually, I believe that's one of the points in the bonus recording that we have. If you've not gotten the bonus recording, you get
Mm,
just a little
mhm,
plug for this. When you leave a review for the podcast and you just screenshot the review that you left, because it takes a little bit of time to show up, and send it to us, we will send you this bonus recording that is 6 and 7 figure business owners talking about what they look for in copywriters. It's a really, really good interview
mhm,
series. So we'll put the link to how to get that in here.
mhm,
But yeah, pricing too low can make someone go, wait a minute now. I liked everything they
mhm,
said, but I don't
mhm,
know. Because it's not like we know that we're good, but they don't know that yet. So when you
mhm.
quote too low, they go, oh, shoot, is this going to be someone where I'm going to get the work and then have to rewrite it again or have to hire somebody else to fix it because it turns out they actually don't know what they're doing? We don't ever want our clients to think that from the get go by any means. So when you're on a call with a client and you're getting to the end of the call, you're like, all right, I think I've got all the information that I've got. What are you going to say?
Say thank you so much for all of this. I've got some great notes that I've taken here. What I'm going to do is go back and review these notes, and I will send you a quote and a timeline for completing this project by the end of day today. That way, you're setting yourself a deadline. You're not giving yourself too much time to be like, oh, is this too high? Is this too low? Get the quote done and out and send it, because
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than wasted time dwelling on, is it too high? Is it too low? No, figure it out what it is and send it through. And then know what
Yes.
the next best thing to do is? Pitch another client after that, because too often what we see is students, "Oh, I sent through a quote and I haven't heard back." It might take more than 24 hours for a client to get back to you. They've got stuff in their inbox, they might have missed it, whatever it is. We're not gonna follow up for a week after that, sending that quote. Obviously, if you talked about a faster timeline, which there's no reason to, but if you did and you need to get started on something, maybe you send a follow-up a little bit sooner. Obviously, there's that nuance, but normal quote, you're gonna give them a minute, and
Mhm.
you're gonna do other things in your business that need doing. This is just one quote for one client in a series of many quotes and many clients throughout your career.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason I know that it's like, well, what do I have to tell them? I'm obvious I'm going to send the quote through. What do I have to tell them? Number one, you're going to tell them when to expect the quote because you're a professional and you're setting
Mhm.
expectations, right? You don't
Yeah.
want them sitting back there being like, I had that whole call with someone. When are they going to tell me what this project is? You want them to always know where they are in the process and what they can expect from you. That is taking good care of your client. But just as importantly, like Kate said, it's a deadline for you.
Mhm.
Because if you don't give yourself a deadline, you're going to spend a day, 2 days perseverating over, oh, I don't know, should it be 600 or should it be 700? 700 feels scary, but 600 doesn't feel like it's enough. You are going to make yourself miserable and waste so much time and energy. So give yourself a deadline.
Mhm.
Really no more than a couple hours. Like Kate said, if you're on a call and it's noon, you can do by I would say, by, "Oh, get it to you by 5 o'clock today or 5 o'clock my time," or whatever that is, or 5 o'clock your time,
Mhm.
or if it's a call that, if you're taking the call
Mhm.
at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, you're taking it end of day, you say, "I'm gonna get it to you by 10 a.m. tomorrow." Put a time so they know exactly when they're going to receive it, but don't make it any more than, like, 2 or 3 hours, because
Mhm.
all you're doing when you make it longer is you're giving yourself more time to, like,
Overthink.
exactly. Exactly. So give yourself that deadline so you have to send it out and you don't end up spending all of that wasted time. And like Kate said, send it out and then start pitching again because it's like, I'm just going to use a dating analogy, but maybe that's a little bit weird. But the concept is that when you have a lot of irons in the fire,
Mhm.
you're a lot less concerned about one of them, right?
Mhm.
If you're talking to, I don't go down the dating road. If you're talking to 6 different people and you're like, "All of these people are terrific." You're feeling a little bit less upset if one of them is maybe a little bit slower getting
Mhm.
back to you. And it's the same thing with a client. Yes, you can want a project, but you don't have to feel quite as attached to it and certainly not needy about it if you're also sending out pitches and talking to a bunch of other clients because you are valuable. What you have to offer is valuable. So don't sit back waiting for this client to call you, to come through with you and
Mhm.
say yes. Because, yeah, they probably will if you guys talk through the project reasonably, but there's always the chance that they won't. But even if they say that they won't, that they don't want to move forward with the project, that even that's going to feel not nearly as bad if you're already talking to 3 other potential clients and you have other quotes out there that you're going to get yeses from.
And that's how you successfully freelance in the first place. That's how you build safety in your business. If you are putting all your eggs in one basket, you are just like being an employee at a company where all your eggs are in that basket. And if the company goes bankrupt, they merge, they do layoffs, you go from having work to net zero. And that's the same thing with freelance. If you're putting all your eggs in one basket, well, you might as well be an employee at that point. The safety from freelance that's beautiful is that you have so many opportunities and all of you have work in multiple clients and in multiple areas. And so if one client decides, we're not working with a copy, we don't have needs for
Mhm.
copy right now, you still have plenty of other options. So
Yeah.
build yourself safety in your business.
Yeah, and think about it, it's just so inefficient too to be like, "I'm going to
Mhm.
pitch, I'm gonna research and pitch one client, and then I'm gonna send out that pitch, and I'm gonna wait for that client to get in touch with me, and then I'm gonna wait for that call to have with that client, and then I'm gonna send through the quote, and then I'm gonna wait for the client to send me to the okay to move forward on that one project." When you think about it that way, it doesn't make sense. You can't operate a business like that. You have to be cultivating a bunch of different
Yeah.
opportunities. It's like we always say, it's dry spells come when you're not planting the seeds for the future bounty. Dry
Mhm.
spells, but you're not gonna get you plant the seeds for plants that come up, for vegetables that come up in a few weeks and a few months, but you need to have planted the seeds. You need to be
Mhm.
out there watering them, planting those seeds so that stuff comes up and it comes up regularly.
Mhm. And I think people, put the cart before the horse or the project before the contract, if you will. In that, if a client hasn't gotten back to you, you don't need to reserve that time for that project that hasn't been agreed to yet. For me, I operate first come, first serve. If we've talked
Yes.
about a project, but I haven't heard back from you and something else comes up in the meantime, then great, I'm working on that. And when that other client finally gets back to me, okay, I can start this project on this date.
We don't owe them anything. We don't owe them anything until they have agreed to our project and we're
Mhm.
moving forward, until that
Yeah.
agreement has been made. Until then, it's your time is up for
Yeah.
grabs. And quite frankly, too, it's probably kind of a good look when a client takes their sweet time to get
Yeah.
back to you to say yes. And you say, definitely looking forward to working with this project. Unfortunately, that time has been taken up, but I can start it by
Mhm.
another project. But I can start it now in 3 weeks or whatever that is because you are in demand and they will have learned their lesson that you are a valuable copywriter valued by other companies and that now they need to move a little bit faster. And if they say, well, oh, but we need in this time, say, absolutely, I understand that. Unfortunately, when I didn't hear back from you, there were other clients who had projects they were ready to move forward with. It's as simple as that. They don't own you and they only get the work from you when they agree to the project. At no point are you reserving anything on the chance that they're going to want to move forward with the project. That is a really great way to end up with not having any cash at the end of the
Mhm.
month. Okay, so we hope we
Mm.
made the concept of that initial client call a little bit easier for you, frankly, right? Because
Yeah.
that initial call, that discovery call, that input call, it's just a it's just a conversation. It's you asking questions to understand more about the project. Maybe it's doing a little bit of thinking in terms of ideas and if that comes up, but you're just looking to understand the project a little bit more. You don't have to. And in fact, I would say that you should not quote a price on that call. The only scenario in which it would be reasonable to quote a project is if you reached out and with a very specific project of like, I will write this welcome email for you, and you know everything you need to know about the welcome email, about the project, about the client. In that case, maybe you could quote on the call. But that scenario is
So
so,
rare.
so rare that it's not even and even in that scenario, you probably talk through more things on the call, there are more things to consider. It still makes sense even in that scenario to say, "Great, let me just we talked about a lot of stuff today, so I just wanna organize all of my notes, but I'm gonna send that quote to you, by 3 o'clock." Simple. Don't make it hard on yourself. Just get off the call and then because we all do it, get off the call and then wrestle with how much, well, I don't know, should we keep that to yourself, but do it off the call so that you have a much better chance of landing on a price that the price that you know that you need to charge versus the price that you kind of want to charge. So maybe there's a better chance that they say yes. Again, you don't even know what their budget looks like. You could be thinking, oh my God, 1,500 is so much because that's the most you've ever charged for a project. But they may see 1,500 go through and go, oh, great. We thought it was going to be more like 2 grand. Awesome. Yeah. Say yes. Let's get started on this on Monday. You don't know. So don't make any assumptions and take that pressure off you. Quote after you get off the call. So with that, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.